What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you the second installment of our post-draft rookie rankings. You guys would have already seen the running back rankings by now. Today, we're attacking receivers. We're attacking a position that really going into the draft, we knew was going to be more bountiful or more plentiful. And quite frankly, you guys saw how shallow the running backs were. We got a few more names to talk about with these receivers and a few really intriguing ones. With that being said, though, Corey, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, hopefully we're not going to be as angry sounding as we were in the first video. We were just kind of upset that all the running backs got ruined by landing spots. These guys definitely got some better landing spots, I would say. A lot of these wide receivers, especially even some of the lower guys, landed in situations that are a lot more bountiful, like you said, for fantasy. So if you guys are new to the channel and this is your first video that you're checking out of ours, we encourage you to check out more videos of ours. And then we also encourage you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Comment any of your thoughts down below and like the video if you're new. And if you want more Dynasty rookie content, our draft guide is live right now. It's only $15. You can get all of our rookie rankings. You can get all of the rookie profiles, all the write-ups. You can get a bunch of databases comparing these prospects amongst each other and tons more information on the fantasystockexchange.com. You can watch the video on the homepage to find out everything that's in the guide. So with that being said, I think we can hit the intro. All right, so let's get into the first guy. Was he your wide receiver one before the season? I can't even remember. Or before the draft?
My wide receiver one was Devonta Smith going into the draft, but it's just so hard to deny. With the landing spot that Ja'Marr Chase got at that 5th overall pick to the Cincinnati Bengals, he's wide receiver one. From a fantasy outlook perspective, let's just look at it. At 5th overall, they saw Joe Burrow go down last season because of failed protection, and a generational type tackle was available for them at 5. And Joe Burrow still picked up his college teammate in Ja'Marr Chase. That just shows you the level of conviction that Joe Burrow had and wanted to secure the LSU target. You're mentioning this guy in terms of overall range where he should rank in your rookie drafts. In a super flex, I would be fine spending anywhere between the 105 and 107 on him. And in a 1 QB, guess what? He's the 102. He is the 102 after Najee Harris. Let's just kind of break down why Ja'Marr Chase lands in such an ideal spot. You can take it away a little bit as well since he was your wide receiver one pre-draft.
Yeah, and we all know from like a film perspective what the guy does well, right? He's a freak of nature downfield, great athlete, great hands, great contested catchability. He brings something to the Cincinnati Bengals offense that they don't currently have. They have a guy who can go up and get it in T. Higgins, who can create separation like Tyler Boyd, but they don't have a guy who's a complete package, and they don't really have a guy who's great after the catch either, which is something that Ja'Marr Chase really brings to the table. And there's plenty more volume than probably a lot of people really can kind of wrap their heads around, because AJ Green had 104 targets last year, which was a complete shock to me. He only caught 47 of those 104 targets because he's AJ Green.
523 receiving yards on 104 targets is abysmal.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like Jerry Jeudy had like 850 yards on 113 targets, and everyone thinks he has had a terrible rookie season. So AJ Green was just completely inefficient, and Gio Bernard on top of that actually vacates 59 targets from the backfield. So Chase comes in to compete right away for an alpha role with T. Higgins, because I think T. Higgins is capable of being an alpha receiver, but with Ja'Marr Chase coming in 5th overall draft capital, pretty much the consensus around the entire NFL was this guy's the best receiver in the draft. And it's very rare that you hear something like that, right? Because pretty much across all positions, there was no consensus. Like people didn't even have Trevor Lawrence as the consensus quarterback one. So the fact that Ja'Marr Chase was that consensus of a wide receiver one in this class just shows you how much faith the league and the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow, of course, vouching for his guy. And he already has an established connection going back to LSU when he won his Biletnikoff Award. And from a long-term perspective, a dynasty perspective, if you are a little bit worried about his rookie season's outlook, because it is kind of crowded for targets there, Tyler Boyd has an out in his contract after this season with minimal dead cap. So if they were to go into this season and Ja'Marr Chase maybe takes a little bit of time to develop, and towards the back half of the season he just starts tearing the league apart, they're probably going to cut bait with Tyler Boyd, because he actually makes quite a bit of money for a player of his role. So it wouldn't shock me if this is Tyler Boyd's last season in Cincinnati as well, which would vacate even more production going forward.
100%. And you mentioned, oh, maybe be scared because in year one, it's a crowded receiver core. I don't nearly agree with that because let's be honest here. Ja'Marr Chase is an alpha receiver. And let's be honest, alpha receivers, I don't care if you have Tyler Boyd on the field. I don't care if you have even like I love T. Higgins. He's a really good receiver. I don't care if you have T. Higgins on the field. Joe Burrow is going to find the guy that he hooked up with for a Biletnikoff Award in 2019, and he's going to force feed this guy the ball. I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about a rookie receiver nearing that 110, 120 target type of output, given that connection already established between these two players, and given the fact that quite literally he lands on an offense that should be much improved from what we saw even last season. Like they've added pieces on the offensive line. You're getting Joe Burrow back. You have dynamic pieces on the outside. I think this offense could be a sneaky middle of the pack to slightly above average type unit in the NFL.
And they passed Joe Burrow's second year 600 times last year too. So from a volume perspective, all this guy really needs to do is establish like a 22-23% target share, which is like probably 110, 120 targets with the amount of time that they're going to pass the ball. And that is going to be enough. I believe that's about the volume that Justin Jefferson saw last year, which was enough to make him just the absolute steal of rookie drafts and redraft leagues as well.
For reference, guess how many guess how many attempts per game Joe Burrow averaged, passing attempts per game Joe Burrow averaged in the 10 he played this year?
Probably almost 40 or over 40, to be honest.
Nearly 41. He had 404 passing attempts in 10 games, which if you equate that to a full season of 16 games would be over 625 attempts. That's insane. That's insane. He would be on pace for nearly 650 passing attempts.
And that's not just like a last year thing too, because before they got Joe Burrow, when they had Ryan Finley and Andy Dalton, they threw the ball 600 times. Too, the year before they got Joe Burrow, they had the number 1 pick. And that's just, I guess that's just a Zach Taylor thing. I guess he just likes to throw the ball. So that's a good thing for Ja'Marr Chase. Obviously, it's a good thing for T. Higgins as well. One thing I want to say, this is not really a T. Higgins episode, but do not fade T. Higgins because T. Higgins is still going to be involved with the amount that they're going to throw the ball. And like I said, Tyler Boyd leaving most likely after this season will help T. Higgins as well. So Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow, like this, that's the 3 stack that you want in this offense because they're a passing team. Joe Mixon's a fine running back, but this is a passing team, and Ja'Marr Chase is going to be a big part of that.
Dude, as soon as Ja'Marr Chase came out in the draft wearing those orange-black shoes, everybody knew it was going to be a reality. And guess what? Cincinnati Bengals lived up to the expectation. Ja'Marr Chase is the wide receiver 1 in this class and well worth that middle of the first round type pick in Superflex rookie drafts. That being said, the wide receiver 2 amongst both of us, both of our 2s post-draft, he was actually my 1 pre-draft, your 2 pre-draft. That's going to be Devonta Smith, wide receiver, newly of the Philadelphia Eagles. I currently have him valued between the 108 and 110 in a Superflex and the 103, 105 in a 1 QB. I'm assuming yours is similar to that.
He's the 109 for me in Superflex.
Yeah,
so yeah, right in that
108
range.
to 110.
Think, in a 1 quarterback league, he'd probably be about my 105. I would say I would probably take the 3 top running backs and Ja'Marr Chase ahead of him, and then probably Kyle Pitts as well. So he's probably 105, 106 for me in a 1 quarterback format.
That's fair. But yeah, with that being said, this one's easy for me. He's got the rapport with Jalen Hurts. We saw it in college in 2017, correct?
Yeah, I think 18.
2017 or 18, regardless. He had that rapport with Jalen Hurts at least for a season in college. And quite frankly, the Eagles don't have any type of presence really to take any targets away from this guy, even as soon as year 1. I know you have the numbers here as well, which are just baffling to even consider.
Yeah, and so there's been a problem with the Eagles receiving core for the last couple of years. And it sounds very rudimentary, very fundamental, but the Eagles receivers can't get open and catch the ball, which is the primary job of wide receiver. And in my write-up for Devonta Smith, which is in our draft guide, I said, what does this guy do best? It's the primary job of a wide receiver. He gets open at will against anybody, and he will catch the ball no matter where it is, no matter who is defending him on that play. The top 3 receiving yardage leaders on the Philadelphia Eagles offense last year were Travis Fulgham, Greg Ward, and Jalen Reagor, all of which had under 600 receiving yards. Here was their rank in target separation, which is something that I expect Devonta Smith to be among the league best, much like his teammate Jerry Jeudy from Alabama as well. Travis Fulgham ranked 74th in target separation. Greg Ward, 63rd. Jalen Reagor, 93. If there's one thing Devonta Smith can do, it's get open and catch the ball. You mentioned the connection with Jalen Hurts going back to his Alabama days. This is very much of a similar situation, in my opinion, to A.J. Brown, his rookie year, Terry McLaurin, his rookie year. And even a guy like Justin Jefferson and Brandon Ayuk last year, when you're a young, talented receiver, all you really need is target opportunity. We can nitpick the quarterback situation and say that Jalen Hurts maybe isn't the most accurate quarterback in the world. And we'd be correct in that assumption. But let's not forget that Terry McLaurin broke out as a rookie with Case Keenum as his quarterback and Dwayne Haskins. Like, if you're a young, talented receiver who can get open and catch the ball, you will get targets, you will get receptions, you will create big plays. It's just your talent alone is enough to carry you to a certain degree.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I mean, quite simply, you mentioned receivers that can get open and catch the ball is not what the Eagles had last year. And as much as I like the talent, the fit of Jalen Reagor, he is not profiled to be a number one on this offense. Devonta Smith absolutely is. Jalen Reagor can be your deep threat. Jalen Reagor can be your deep play type guy. But Devonta Smith is going to be that guy who moves the change. Devonta Smith is going to be that guy who can command a 130, 140 type of target output. And quite frankly, in this offense, they need guys that can just be dependable. And Devonta Smith, I've said it multiple times, he is the most dependable wide receiver in this entire class. You know exactly what you're going to get from him when you put him on the field. I've said it before, you can test guys athletically. You can test guys in terms of actual metrics.
And he's a great athlete too. He didn't test, but he would have tested well.
I'm going to say there are some guys that say when they're on the field, they're just different. And Devonta Smith is an absolute football player. You watch this guy in and out of his breaks, after the catch, even vertically. Like he's just such a good all-around player, man. So yeah, I absolutely love it. And he is the clear wide receiver 2 for me. And well worth, again, as we mentioned, that mid-first in the Superflex formats. That being said, we're going to go on to our consensus wide receiver 3. He's going to be my wide receiver 3 and Corey's wide receiver 4 post-draft. And that's going to be Jalen Waddle, who was selected 6th overall by the Miami Dolphins. I'll start this off because I'm a little bit higher on him. I mean, you guys have all known my love for what Jalen Waddle is able to do on the football field. And guess where that started? That started with Tua at Alabama. We saw multiple times these guys hook up on a regular basis. And coming in, people are going to be like, well, how does he fit? They have Will Fuller, who stretches the field. They have Devontae Parker, who kind of plays that physical outside boundary role. They don't have a guy who can create plays after the catch, who can separate at an elite.
You're not a slot receiver either.
Quite frankly,
Waddle can be.
And Jalen Waddle is absolutely that. Yes, Will Fuller profiles to be the separator on their offense, but he's going to be suspended, and we don't necessarily know how he's going to play out for this year, not to mention he is on a one-year deal. Jalen Waddle in the long term is going to, I would say even by mid-season this year, become Tua's favorite target. And when you're getting Tua's favorite target, who is probably one of the, we'll say coming into the league, one of the top 5 most efficient rookies coming in we've seen in a while, you get this guy 100 targets, he's going to be able to produce fringe top 24 receiver type numbers, even in his rookie season. In general, you get a guy who can separate. You get a guy who can produce at an elite level after the catch. And we know Tua's limitations, at least as a rookie, pushing the ball down the field. Jalen Waddle is going to give you such a space to really get the ball in. Because let's be honest here. Jalen Waddle, as good as anybody else is in this class, separates better than everybody in terms of metrics, in terms of film, in terms of what you really see on the field. He was the best ideal fit of any wide receiver, quite frankly, in this class, if Miami was going to take one, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think with Will Fuller, he's a vertical stretch the field guy, right?
Yes.
And it's not that Waddle can't do that. He absolutely can.
Yeah.
But I think you get the horizontal stretching of the field out of Jalen Waddle because, like I said, you don't have a slot receiver on this team worth really anything. So you have Devontae Parker on the outside, who's going to be more of your possession, kind of contested catch guy. And you have Will Fuller on the other side, at least for this year, as more of your deep threat, kind of stretch the field. And maybe Tua, from a deep ball perspective, is a little bit more unlocked by a guy like Will Fuller. But Jalen Waddle probably, if I had to guess, will be a guy like Tua's best friend because he's going to get open quickly. Yeah. He's going to make things happen after the catch. He was a 6th overall pick. They're probably going to use him in other ways, too. They're probably going to give him jet sweeps and screens and stuff like that. So he's a guy I do have wide receiver 4. My only reason I have him at wide receiver 4, and we'll get into who I have at 3 in a second, but the reason I have him at 4 is because his ceiling, in my opinion, is always going to be a high-efficiency player, and that's fine because that's what Tyreek Hill is. But for him to be a top 5 receiver, he's going to need to be very, very efficient on 120, 130 targets a year because I don't see him getting any more targets in a single season than that throughout his career, just because of the type of player he is.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And you mentioned Tyreek Hill. As much as I want Jalen Waddle to be turned into Tyreek Hill, it's lofty expectations for the first part. And second part, he's not playing with Patrick Mahomes. Now, can Tua be an above average to even good quarterback in the NFL? I absolutely still think he has that potential because he showed me enough at Alabama to say that. He was taken 5th overall for that exact reason. He was a very good college quarterback. Now, did he struggle as a rookie? Absolutely. But I'm going to bet on the talent here. I'm going to bet at the fit, and I'm going to bet the fact that they used the 6th overall pick on this guy for a reason, and that is to be their dynamic threat to really push this offense toward the next level that we really didn't see last year.
Yeah, and again, they also passed on that franchise tackle that the Bengals passed on too, which they definitely could have used. So, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I still think they should have went offensive line personally. If they were going to go receiver, they should have done it at 18, especially considering the next guy that we're going to talk about on this list would have been available at 18 for them to pick. And I think he would have been a great fit for this offense as well. But speaking of that guy, that's Rashad Bateman, wide receiver now of the Baltimore Ravens. As Danny mentioned, I believe is your wide receiver 5?
Wide receiver 5, yeah.
Okay, so he's my wide receiver 3. So he's my wide receiver 3, and I actually have him in the same tier as I have Ja'Marr Chase and Devontae Smith. And the reason being is because I think what Rashad Bateman does is he completely changes that offense. I think the type of impact that he's going to have on Lamar Jackson from an accuracy perspective, from a consistency perspective, is going to completely supersede everybody's expectations. Everybody just thinks that Lamar Jackson is a limited passer, and he has been to this point in his career. But let's look at the passing options that Lamar Jackson has had. He's had a 157-pound first-round pick wide receiver as his number 1 receiving option throughout his entire career as a passer in the NFL. And then he has a great tight end, a Pro Bowl caliber tight end, but that's pretty much it. And then outside of that, he's basically just running and throwing to running backs and Willie Snead the rest of the time. So if nothing else, Rashad Bateman can kind of unlock the same type of situation we saw from Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen last year. And I'm not saying that Rashad Bateman is as good as Stephon Diggs, but I think he does have that type of potential. It's pretty much the same profile, size-wise and skill set-wise as a guy like Stephon Diggs with Rashad Bateman. And we heard Greg Roman right away come out and praise this pick. I'm going to put the quote up on the screen right now and read it off. But Greg Roman basically said, I don't want to call it an embarrassment of riches, but when you talk about Hollywood, Devin Duvernay, Miles Boykin, I really feel good about the guys we have. And then once they took Rashad Bateman and Tylan Wallace, who they later took in the draft, he basically talked about how this offense is going to run through what Lamar does well and hopefully expand onto what Lamar already currently does. And they wanted to play with more balance, which usually we hear this in the other direction, right? We usually hear teams talking about more balance, meaning they want to run the ball more. What Greg Roman was talking about is they want to be more efficient as a passing offense and not so predictable in running the ball all the time. And he said some things that people are going to see from us they haven't seen before, which basically the writer said their offense is going to evolve. And if they're like Greg Roman's received some criticism for I know amongst like Ravens people, they think he maybe didn't do the greatest job of play calling last year, but we've seen this guy adapt before, right? He adapted when Lamar Jackson was drafted, and he continued to adapt throughout Lamar Jackson's career. So if he can design an offense with Rashad Bateman as the feature pass catching option behind a guy like Mark Andrews, I seriously think we're going to get a guy that is used in the slot. We're going to get a guy who's used as a possession receiver to move the chains, because that is the thing that the Ravens offense was missing. And that's what got them into so much trouble in the playoffs when they couldn't beat the Titans and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Again, it was a close toss-up between Bateman and my wide receiver 4 we're going to be talking about next. But I absolutely agree. I people just want to are quick to just kneel a death sentence to these receivers because they profile into quote-unquote less than ideal spots. Guess when's the last time that really happened? You know, A.J. Brown in Tennessee, or even last year when people wanted to say, oh, Justin Jefferson landed with the Minnesota Vikings. They have Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph. Like, what are they going to do there? Oh, he just so happened to break the rookie receiving record. So I absolutely agree. I think Bateman is one of the safer options, especially at the top.
I think he's the most underrated player in rookie drafts right now, just because. Absolutely. And it's not necessarily where he's going, because I think people respect where he's going, but I think nobody's excited to pick him right now. And they should be, because, I mean, Lamar Jackson's a better quarterback than Tua. He's a better quarterback than the next guy that we're going to talk about, at least of right now, because he's a rookie. He's a better quarterback, in my opinion, than what Devontae Smith is dealing with Jalen Hurts. Like, he's a good quarterback. Joe Burrow. An MVP award. He's going to get a second contract from a dynasty perspective. this is a guy who's going to be linked to a quarterback situation that is stable, which is not something you can say about a lot of other quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, like even Ja'Marr Chase, he's better than Joe Burrow still. Like this is still a really, really good quarterback, a top 8 option in this league. So
I think Joe Burrow will become better than Lamar Jackson, but as of right now, we haven't seen Joe Burrow be better than Lamar Jackson as a passer to this point in his career.
Yeah, that's fair. With that being said, we could shift off and go to number 5 on this list. And this is a guy we've been hyping up all offseason. This is a guy who even coming into the draft, people were not high enough. This was our wide receiver 5 each going into the draft, and he stays at your 5. He becomes my 4. That's going to be Elijah Moore, newly of the New York Jets, with, I believe, the 34th overall selection in the draft.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this guy. He's actually currently, I believe, I want to say he's my 12th overall player, 12th or 13th. Him and Mac Jones are flip-flop between me. Regardless, I would be willing to spend a turn 112, 201 type pick on this guy. That's how much I believe in the talent, in these situations. Yeah, in a super flex, by the way. In a one quarterback league, he's more of a mid to late first round pick. But let's talk about Elijah Moore. First things first, Jamison Crowder is under contract this season, but he has no dead money after this season. So he could be a general cut candidate following the season. Because let's be honest here, this Jets team is going to want to get younger, and they're going to want to get real more consistent at the receiver spot. And Jamison Crowder just doesn't really fit what they're going to try to do for the future, especially considering this team is off Adam Gase, who, wanted to feed Jamison Crowder the ball, 90 times in 10 games last year. Ridiculous. With that being said, this no coaching staff was ecstatic to get Elijah Moore at the top of the second round after spending 2 first-round picks on Zach Wilson and protection for Zach Wilson. This is a guy who I understand they took Denzel Mims in the second round. And there are going to be lazy people on Twitter that may even end up saying Denzel Mims is going to be more of a factor than Elijah Moore. But guess what? This coaching regime took Elijah Moore. None of these guys took Denzel Mims. And let's be honest here, as a prospect in general, Elijah Moore is a much better player coming in than what even Denzel Mims was coming into the season last year. Let's talk about the opportunity, though. You're getting a rookie quarterback with a rookie wide receiver in the same draft, and Zach Wilson is not a dumb player. He knows what Elijah Moore really is adept at, and that is being able to separate at an elite rate and work down the field. And people that are just going to label this guy as a slot right away, he spent 22% of his snaps on the outside. This is a guy who could play all over the formation. He could play in your Z. He could play in your slot. You don't just have to stick him in the slot like other guys we're going to mention later on this list. You mentioned this overall. People might be kind of concerned. Oh, will Elijah Moore get the targets? They still have Jamison Crowder for this year, Denzel Mims. They're vacating a ridiculous amount of targets with the departure of a guy like Brashad Perriman. They had no names that were getting 20, 30 plus targets on this team last year. I'm sorry. If you guys are in the Braxton Berrios fan club, he's basically dead in this wide receiver room. Quite frankly, this is a guy who's produced as a freshman, sophomore, junior, whatever. He played with DK Metcalf and freaking A.J. Brown, for crying out loud, and was still able to produce at a young age. I don't care what type of competition they have on the Jets. None of that competition is going to even come close to what he dealt with in college. So overall, Elijah Moore is one of the most safe wide receivers in this entire rookie class. And if people are willing to let him fall simply because he's a New York Jet, simply because he's working with an unproven quarterback, take that value every time, because this is a locked and loaded, at minimum, top 15 pick in Superflex drafts.
Yeah, and I think I've never made this comparison, but I just thought of it because of my comparison for Elijah Moore. But pre-draft, I compared Elijah Moore to Tyler Lockett. Zach Wilson kind of plays like Russell Wilson.
A little bit, yeah.
He's got the schoolyard kind of mentality that Russell Wilson has. He'll have the scramble plays and the off-platform stuff. Like, Elijah Moore can be his Tyler Lockett, which I think, coming from the San Francisco 49ers, Robert Saleh obviously went up against Russell Wilson twice a year. He definitely saw that kind of quarterback-receiver connection, and I'm willing to bet they would have taken this guy in the first round. If they didn't trade up for Elijah Vera Tucker, if they had stuck at 23, I bet they would have picked this guy in the first round, because a lot of people, including a lot of the big draft nicks, were surprised that Tennessee didn't pick him. And it was probably just because Caleb Farley was on the board and they didn't expect him to be, because Tennessee was really quoted to be interested in Elijah Moore. And of course, A.J. Brown would have been really happy about that. If anyone saw the video of A.J. Brown and Elijah Moore after the draft, that was I mean, I thought that was really awesome to see. This is a dude I'm just so comfortable betting on. Much like Devontae Smith, much like Rashad Bateman, there's target opportunity for a very young, talented receiver. Sometimes it's really just that easy. We can nitpick the current players on the roster. We can nitpick the quarterback situation. But when you're a young, talented receiver with no established weapons on that offense, because there is zero, including Corey Davis, who they brought in, he hasn't established a rapport with the current quarterback.
Like even
it's
Jamison
just such
Crowder,
an easy situation for more.
Like even Jamison Crowder, I mean, we're talking about a team that as a whole unit, including Darnold and Flacco, threw the ball 498 times all of last season. Their offensive line has gotten better throughout free agency and the draft, especially with the addition of Elijah Bear-Tucker. You're getting much improved on the surface quarterback play from Darnold and Flacco to what you're getting with Zach Wilson. And none of these guys that he's coming in to compete with are established whatsoever. I can see this guy with Zach Wilson commanding that 100 target type plateau that we need to see from these guys early on, quite frankly, in these type of situations. Elijah Moore should be able to get that with relative ease because he is by far, from a talent perspective, maybe you can argue Davis because he had a good year last year, but when you're comparing guys like Jamison Crowder, Denzel Mims, Braxton Berrios, no. Elijah Moore is 10 times the receiver as all of them, and quite frankly, I expect Zach Wilson to be able to see that as early as training camp, in all honesty. They're going to enter rookie training camp together, and guess what? Elijah Moore is going to absolutely ball the fuck out. Be prepared right now because you guys are going to be hearing multiple reports on him throughout the summer. I'm just so excited.
Definitely the type of guy that would be a big-time camp buzz guy because, I mean, all the kids, like we talked about it already, all the guy's done is produce. So, like, it wouldn't shock me if he came in right away and produced because that's all he did in college, too. And a lot of people caught on to his, like, analytics profile and stuff after the fact. But, I mean, when you produce in college, you're usually likely to produce in the NFL, and that's all Elijah Moore did. So, speaking of a guy that all he did was produce in college, our number 6 receiver is probably shocking to some of you that are hearing this guy this high, but we both have Dyami Brown, wide receiver, formerly of North Carolina, now of the Washington football team, as our wide receiver 6, ahead of some of the guys that you're probably expecting us to say as wide receiver 6. But this is a guy who's more an early to mid-second round pick in super flex drafts, probably a late first, early second in a one-quarterback format. I would say initially this landing spot looks kind of crowded, right? You have Curtis Samuel coming in. He was an acquisition of the Washington football team in free agency. Logan Thomas kind of emerging last year as a weapon for this offense. And then, of course, we know what we're getting with the 2 running backs and with Terry McLaurin. But what some people are kind of discounting is the role that this guy is going to play in this offense and who his quarterback is. Because Brown will serve as the field stretcher, which should excite fantasy players. Because with Ryan Fitzpatrick, let's just think of the last 2 teams that Ryan Fitzpatrick has been on. Who were the primary field stretchers on those teams? In Miami, it was Devontae Parker the year he broke out. In Tampa Bay, it was Deshaun Jackson / Mike Evans the year that they were just kind of lighting up the league as well.
Isn't that when week 1 when Deshaun Jackson had like over 200 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns or something like that?
Those first 3 games, he was like the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And any other time that Fitzpatrick was on the field, he was always performing well. And not only him, but Evans too, because Evans also kind of served that role as a field stretcher as well. If Dyami Brown can perform early, and much like Elijah Moore, we hear good training camp buzz and stuff that we're probably looking at a guy that could low-key outproduce Curtis Samuel his first year with the Washington football team, who, might I add, Curtis Samuel has already been misused by this coaching staff. Curtis Samuel was there in Carolina with Ron Rivera and Scott Turner and all these people that are on the staff, and he never reached his full potential with that staff until Matt Rule came in. So if we're expecting Curtis Samuel to come in and just be like a wide receiver 2 in fantasy, I would pump the brakes a little bit on that because this coaching staff has already misused the guy. And I think Dyami Brown is more so the type of receiver that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to gravitate towards. And again, much like Elijah Moore, all this kid's done is produce too. He had 2,000-yard seasons. He had a great sophomore year. This is a guy that should be able to come in right away and have a role because he's been productive throughout his college career.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. People want to just say right off the bat without looking into any context, oh, well, what's Dyami going to do? They brought in so much target competition in. Like I said with Chase, there may be other guys on the field, but if you earn your role and you prove that you could be a really good difference-making type player, you're going to be used in the outlet that you're going to be attributed to. For example, with Dyami Brown, he's going to be that outside receiver. He's going to be that field stretcher. He's going to be that boundary type guy that Ryan Fitzpatrick has relied upon in every stop he's been in the NFL. And guess what? We talked about the matchmaker, and I had Nico Collins as being the matchmaker for the Washington football team and basically outlined this exact thing. They got a better version of that as an outside field stretching type receiver because, quite frankly, I did not expect Dyami Brown to be able to be available to this team. The fact that he was is insane, but regardless, analyzing the situation, he fits absolutely perfectly. And aside from Terry McLaurin, who's going to operate really as their alpha, Curtis Samuel is going to be the in or around the line of scrimmage type of guy for this team. Dyami Brown is that true field stretcher, physical boundary receiver that they don't necessarily have a presence of in this.
Is this a top 10 offense? Like legitimately too, because like
even if how the quarterback plays.
Yeah, even if you want to say this is like a crowded situation, okay. If this is a top 10 offense, he's still going to be valuable. He's still going to be like a wide receiver 3 that you could probably throw into your flex as a rookie. Like that's legitimately how I feel about Dyami Brown because I actually think this offense is going to be that good because Ryan Fitzpatrick has proven over the past couple of years that he's probably one of the best 20 quarterbacks on the planet. He keeps getting replaced and he keeps getting upheavaled by young quarterbacks, but like Ryan Fitzpatrick's a good player. He's a good quarterback and he elevates the play of everybody around him. And with Dyami Brown, you already have an established alpha receiver with Terry McLaurin who can handle James Bradbury twice a year and all the corners that he's going to be facing. So I just love the landing spot for him. I think in the long term, it's all going to kind of work itself out, and Dyami Brown can establish himself as the number 2 in this offense.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And from a talent standpoint, he could definitely be there. And for the people that are saying, oh, well, like Curtis Samuel was signed to big money, you mentioned it even before we started recording, but this coaching staff has misused Curtis Samuel before. Let's not act like he's going to be that elite, high volume type guy that he was in Carolina, even last year, which he, for the record, are we really counting the wide receiver 26 in PPR as elite? I don't know about you, but I'm not. But he's been misused before by this exact coaching staff. Dyami Brown, as we mentioned, I'm going to mention Terrace Marshall soon, but similar to what we saw from Chase Claypool, these guys are going to produce at such an efficient rate that raw target volume is not how you can measure these guys. Chase Claypool had 109 targets and was a top 24 receiver in even PPR formats, I believe. I think he was a top 18 receiver in standard, top 24 in PPR on only 109 targets. If you could tell me right now that Dyami Brown was going to get 90 to 95 targets next year, I could pretty comfortably slate him in that top 30 to 35 receiver range as a rookie.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I think obviously if he does that as a rookie, he's much more likely to continue to grow and continue to get better. So with that being said, let's move on to the next receiver we have here. We have Rondale Moore, wide receiver from the Arizona Cardinals. I think on the surface, a lot of people are very, very excited about this landing spot. I'll let you kind of get into why it might not be the greatest landing spot in the world, but still we're relatively excited for Rondale Moore.
Yeah, I mean, he's currently my wide receiver 8, your wide receiver 7, I believe. Let me just double check. Yeah, okay. Talking about him, though, he fits an identity in this team that they don't really have right now. He adds elites, or I mean, you got the elite speed of Isabella, but quite frankly, he's not even remotely the type of receiver that anybody's going to be worried about. But he adds elite horizontal and vertical speed. You could use him in multiple aspects, and he's such a good after the catch receiver. Probably the overall best in this entire class. Him and Waddle is probably the only argument there, but what Rondale Moore does after the catch, they don't necessarily have that type of explosive playmaker in space right now. And while people might on the surface just evaluate this spot and say, oh, what a clustered receiver room they have. They have Hopkins. They have AJ Green. They have Christian Kirk in town. But when you actually analyze it, Ed Werder actually tweeted this out, I believe. And he basically analyzed Cliff Kingsbury, since coming into the NFL in 2019, has run the most 4+ wide receiver looks in the entire league at 548. For reference, the next closest team in the league has ran 161. Yes, a near 400 discrepancy. And you've mentioned this multiple times, but the Cardinals are quite literally building their wide receiver room around the strengths of different guys, kind of like a basketball team, as you've referenced multiple times. Hopkins is their possession, second level type threat. AJ Green is their physical boundary receiver. Christian Kirk can operate as that first level and intermediate type of option. And Rondale Moore's elite yards after catch and versatility in or around the line of scrimmage to get looks out of the slot or the backfield is something that they really needed. So I trust the draft capital, and overall the landing spot I feel like can absolutely develop him with those established receivers in place. This guy lacks polish, but what he doesn't lack is the dynamic traits to be special in terms of operating fast and smooth with the football in his hands.
Yeah, and I think with Rondale Moore, you're never going to know how he's going to be used, right? Until we actually see it, we can say he's going to be used in the backfield. We can say he's so versatile and he should be used this way and that way and whatever. We don't actually know until Cliff Kingsbury actually uses him, and maybe we see a preseason game or something like that. But this is a landing spot that I can get behind with Rondale Moore, right? Because if he went to the Giants and he was trusted in Jason Garrett's arms with how he was going to be used, then you have a little bit more concerns. At least with Arizona, you know that Cliff Kingsbury is a creative guy that should be able to use him correctly. But again, we're never going to know for sure. So this one is a bit of a riskier proposition, in my opinion, just because Rondale Moore, we've documented his limitations going back to the pre-draft process with some of his hands and some of the routes that he ran at Purdue. I think with Kyler Murray, who's a somewhat limited player, maybe to some degree that some people don't really knock him for as much as they should, he can offer another safety blanket type of option for Kyler Murray, along with what you get with Hopkins and with what you get out of Edmonds out of the backfield. And if nothing else, Arizona just likes little guys. So they added Rondale Moore because he's under 5'10". So yeah. I like the fit, but I don't love the fit because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there that love the fit. And I'm not there with Rondale Moore yet. I like the fit, but I'm kind of like, tempering expectations a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And for the record, even starting at Diami, I think Diami is more so an early second round pick, early to mid. Whereas once you get into Rondale and the next couple of guys we're going to mention, that's where you get into the mid to late second round. But the next guy I'm going to mention is actually a guy I have ranked above Rondale, and that's going to be Terrace Marshall Jr., newly of the Carolina Panthers. I believe he was their, 63rd overall draft pick this year?
Something like that, yeah.
And I absolutely love the fit for him, quite frankly. He can step in right away, acting as their outside X receiver to give really Darnold that big target to complement the speed and yak abilities that he already has on this offense with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, respectively. The role that I really see for Terrace Marshall can honestly be similar to what I mentioned this with Diami Brown, but what we saw from Chase Claypool with the Steelers this year. He's a receiver that can provide an athletic, big body who can work down the field and doesn't really necessarily need elite volume to be fantasy successful, fantasy efficient, even as a rookie. And honestly, I could see this guy on, I mentioned 90 targets. Let's just say hypothetically 85, 90 targets, can have that 55, 60 catch, 850 yard, 8 touchdown type rookie season, which for a rookie, getting him in the mid to late second round, nobody's complaining with that level of output.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think with Terrace Marshall on the surface, again, much like Diami Brown, he's got a situation where you're probably looking at it and you're like, shit, like he's got Christian McCaffrey to compete with. He's got DJ Moore to compete with. He's got Robbie Anderson to compete with. They drafted the tight end in the 3rd round as well. So you're looking at a situation that's going to be crowded for targets. But if you believe in the talent of Terrace Marshall, which personally I was a little lower on Terrace Marshall as a player coming into the draft process, but I think he has the talent to establish himself as the 2nd best receiver in this offense. And I could pull up Robbie Anderson's contract situation. I don't think he signed more than a 3-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. It's probably the first 2 is where the money was kind of front loaded. So I'd imagine after this year, if Terrace Marshall really has an 850 yard, 8 touchdown rookie season, they'll probably cut bait with Robbie Anderson after this year. So I would say Terrace Marshall as a whole is probably more of a taxi squad rebuild pick. If you're in a rebuild, let's say you sold all your players for draft picks, this is the type of player you want to go after because he might take a year to develop given the competition that he's behind for targets. So he's a guy that I'm willing to take in the 2nd round, but probably I would want to temper expectations for him his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, and for the record, Robbie Anderson is going to be a 29-year-old unrestricted free agent following the season. So,
really? So he's not even on a 3. It was a 2-year deal that he signed.
2 years, $20 million.
Yeah. Okay. So that's definitely why they drafted him then, because he can fill the same role that Robbie Anderson has because they're both kind of deep threat receivers. They both have borderline 4.3 speed that can really stretch out a defense. So yeah, Terrace Marshall definitely the type of player that you're probably going to need to wait on maybe half the season or the full season this year. But come 2022, this guy should be ready to go as the number 2 receiver in this offense. And maybe Sam Darnold has broken out at that point, or maybe they're drafting a quarterback next year. Who the hell knows?
Absolutely. This is the classic stash and hope you get something big type receiver, because his upside is really unparalleled in this range of your rookie draft. So with that being said, we can move on to number 9. What a guy, in my opinion, his ceiling could be through the roof given the current state of affairs in their wide receiver corps. And that's going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver from the Detroit Lions. A little bit of a faller from our rankings. Again, pre-draft, I believe we both had this guy about wide receiver 7 or 8. So he's at 9. And that's really only having to do with the draft capital, because we did not expect this guy to fall to the 4th round.
Nope. Yeah, no. If he would have went in the 2nd round, which is probably where I expected him to go,
same.
Then he probably would be even higher on this list. One of the, again, I'm going to repeat it because I said it for Bateman, I said it for Smith. One of the biggest things for a young receiver is opportunity. And there is no opportunity for targets more ripe for the taking than the Detroit Lions receiving depth chart. Because currently on their depth chart, they have Brashad Perriman, Tyrell Williams, Khalif Raymond, and Quintez Cephas. If Amon-Ra St. Brown is even the 3rd most talented player in that offense, he's going to produce well as a rookie. And I would, again, argue that he's probably the 1st or 2nd most talented receiver in that receiving core. ARSB was a 2nd-round grade for me. That's the grade I had on him. He's wide receiver 7 right behind De'Ami Brown for me pre-draft. I believe he should come in right away into this situation and establish a connection with Jared Goff. And the reason I say that is because the type of role he's going to play is a slot receiver, most likely at the next level. Much like Cooper Kupp did as a rookie, he came in right away, Cooper Kupp did, and established a connection with Jared Goff because Jared Goff likes his slot receivers, because he's more of a cookie cutter, like inside a structure quarterback who would very much like a situation like that. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, Dan Campbell coming over from the New Orleans Saints, maybe they deploy this guy in a similar way to Michael Thomas did, the way Michael Thomas was deployed in New Orleans. I think people need to chill a little bit on him because I know some people are super, super high on the guy. But, I mean, a mid-2nd round pick, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what he's worth in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Not really much else to add. You get a talented receiver with a higher grade on both of our boards, landing in a spot with no established receiver apart from the tight end and TJ Hawkinson. Absolutely wheels up. If this guy even gets any remote buzz in training camp, I would even be willing to spend even higher on him because I believe in the talent.
And he's a guy that I'm probably going to be in on redraft leagues and best ball leagues like this season, because he has the best chance of the last 3 or so receivers that we've talked about to produce this year. Because I mean, easily over Terrace Marshall, I would easily take Amon-Ra St. Brown and redraft over Terrace Marshall. And I think Rondale Moore as well. I think he has a better chance to produce this year with Rondale Moore having to compete with guys like AJ Green, who's on a 1-year deal and stuff this year. It might be a little bit murkier of a situation for this season, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, yeah, there's a good chance they could add like an alpha receiver in next year's draft. But if they add a stud quarterback and an alpha receiver next year, and Amon-Ra St. Brown's the second year productive receiver, 2nd option for a stud young quarterback, is anybody going to be complaining about his dynasty value at that point? Probably not, because I compared the guy to Tyler Boyd before he was drafted, and Tyler Boyd had a solid run of 3 or 4 years where he was like a wide receiver too. So if Amon-Ra St. Brown can turn into that in Detroit, I think it's a big time win if you're getting him in the mid-2nd round. So the next guy that we're going to go on to here is Kadarius Toney, wide receiver from the New York Giants, who was actually drafted way ahead of all these guys that we just talked about. But
let's just quickly preface the fact that we had a 4th round drafted player ranked ahead of a 1st round drafted player.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. The Giants basically, I'm not sure why they picked Kadarius Toney, but what's done is done. He was the 20th overall pick for a reason. The Giants have an out in Sterling Shepard's contract after this season, and Kadarius Toney, much like Terrace Marshall and probably Rondale Moore as well, I think this is a guy that is probably having a down rookie season and is going to produce well in his 2nd year. Given Toney's profile, he's likely going to need a year or 2 to get his legs under him, because this is a guy that didn't produce early in college, unlike Elijah Moore and De'Ami Brown, didn't have multiple years of production. So he might, if he does become a productive player, he's going to probably not do it right away, if I had to guess. I actually do like this landing spot, though, from Kadarius Toney's perspective, because you got to think he's got 1st round draft capital. He's a quick separator, the type of player he is. He's a quick separator. He can get open quickly. He can make things happen after the catch. For a guy that holds onto the ball too long in Daniel Jones, and he has potential for big plays after the catch and some design stuff probably as well, much like we saw with Tavon Austin, with Jason Garrett last time he was in Dallas. He used Tavon Austin in kind of a gadget role. Maybe they used Toney like that as a rookie to get him involved. Plus, we all know Sterling Shepard has a history of concussions and soft tissue injuries anyway. So there's a chance that this guy gets on the field in his full-time slot role, which is what I believe I think he has to be a slot receiver. That's the only thing with Kadarius Toney, is that I think he has to be a slot receiver at the next level. And unfortunately, that's going to mean he goes as Sterling Shepard goes. Whether Sterling Shepard is on the field, I don't think Kadarius Toney makes a big impact. But if Sterling Shepard is not on the field, then we're looking probably at Kadarius Toney getting more involved in the offense.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. This was the ideal spot for a guy in Kadarius Toney, who we both believe as a player has his limitations. However, if you're throwing him into a slot-only role and you're planning on releasing Sterling Shepard, I do think this guy can be successful at the next level. We kind of mentioned in the matchmaker, but kind of idealizing this guy right away, given that he doesn't necessarily have the true nuance to be a technician as a route runner, nor does he have the verticality or the ability to really work at the third level of the field. If he can even be a Tarik Cohen type of outlet for this offense, even year one, year two, whatever, as he's fully developing as a receiver, Tarik Cohen showed that he could be productive in that type of role. I wouldn't be surprised if if Kadarius Toney was kind of used in that type of fashion early in his career while he's developing. So wide receiver 10, I understand the draft capital. I don't know. I just see the other guys as having higher ceilings. Again, I mentioned Tarik Cohen, Curtis Samuel's probably around the level I would see a guy Kadarius Toney being.
Yeah, and I mentioned more of a rebuild type pick as well, just because you're probably going to have to wait a little bit of time. And honestly, if you guys wanted to not even draft him at all and wait till next year when his value has tanked, if he has a down rookie season, you could probably get this guy for absolutely nothing, because he could have – it wouldn't shock me if he has like a Jalen Reagor first year or something like that. Like, he's just not very productive, maybe doesn't really look like he knows what he's doing too much, and then he comes out in his second year and kind of pulls a DJ Chark on some people and has a productive second year with Sterling Shepard out of the mix. So he's a guy that's an interesting pivot point in rookie drafts, because he's probably a guy that you either love him or hate him. That's pretty much the way Kadarius Toney has always been sliced in the fantasy industry. But we are going to get into some honorable mentions, because this is a pretty deep receiver class, so we're not going to get into all these guys' landing spots. But briefly, we should talk about a couple of the guys that aren't not in our top 10. Nico Collins was a third-round pick to the Houston Texans, and I think when you look at his profile, he's another guy like Kadarius Toney that probably is going to need some time, given the fact that he wasn't all that productive in college. But the ceiling is absolutely there with Nico Collins. He is in a situation where he's got Brandon Cooks to compete with, and that's pretty much it. If he's able to carve out a nice role for himself early, he can establish himself as a true weapon in that offense. And if Deshaun Watson remains the quarterback in Houston, if for whatever reason this stuff blows over that Deshaun Watson's dealing with and he's the quarterback going forward, then you might just get freaking Deshaun Watson's future #1 receiver for absolutely nothing, pretty much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, he's a bit of a project as a prospect. But you mentioned it. This is a year with Houston where you kind of don't know what's going on with Watson. You did draft Davis Mills. This is the year that you expect Nico Collins to really learn and grow as a wide receiver. So if you're drafting this guy, don't take him in redraft, even best ball year one. I wouldn't necessarily do that, because he's still got a ways to go as both a route runner and a complete receiver. But man, you cannot ignore that size, speed profile that he has on the outside and ability to work down the field. And we've seen Deshaun Watson is able to create basically better than really any quarterback maybe in the league apart from Patrick Mahomes. And what Nico Collins can do from that package to support Deshaun Watson, we could see this guy developing into a really solid wide receiver 2 type fantasy football output, even as soon as year 2, if he's able to continue growing. So while we do have him as honorable mention, this is a really sneaky high upside guy that I would be considering at the end of the second round. Maybe even higher. If we knew Watson was playing this year 100%, I may be willing to bite the bullet even a little bit higher than the early second.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'd probably be ahead of Kadarius Toney for sure, and he'd probably be in kind of Terrace Marshall territory where you're looking for more of a developmental potential #1 receiver. But in his case, he'd actually be tied to a way better quarterback than Sam Darnold, which would be really interesting. But obviously, we got a lot of uncertainty with the Texans. We don't know if, Watson's going to play this year or at all with the Texans, because on top of his legal situation, he also had the fact that he wanted to be traded away from Houston. So we really have no idea what the Houston Texans situation is right now, but definitely I would classify Nico Collins as a rebuild pick, because if Watson does leave, then you're looking at a situation where they got to rebuild their entire roster and their quarterback situation. And maybe 2 years from now, Nico Collins has grown into a capable number one receiver at that point.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. With that being said, a few other names we can quickly mention before we get out of here. Not too in depth, but Amir Smith-Marset out of the Minnesota Vikings got an opportunity to be the wide receiver 3 in that offense, possibly even further, given the age and the injuries that Adam Thielen has dealt with these past couple of years. Amari Rodgers, we've been clamoring for the Packers to take a receiver.
We might have to expand on him a little bit more, just because some people are really high on him. So with Amari Rodgers, the thing, I just didn't like his film. Personally, I didn't really like his film. I thought the Deebo Samuel comparisons to me were completely overblown. I think Deebo Samuel was a far more complete receiver than Amari Rodgers in college. And I think Amari Rodgers had very, very questionable hands. He wasn't very good in contested situations. There's a play that I wrote up for when I wrote up Amari Rodgers for the draft guide. There's a play where Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah sticks with him on a slot route and basically just knocks him completely off the ball. I just didn't think he was very physical unless he had the ball in his hands. When you get the ball in his hands, he's a great player. But how much can he really create on his own? And that's, at that point, you're just leaving him completely to the hands of the coaching staff to deal with, because I don't think Amari Rodgers is going to come in right away, be the slot receiver and just create instant separation, get off press coverage and stuff. Because I don't think he has a very complete game. I think he's more of a gadget type of player. And I think he was kind of overdrafted. I had a 4th round grade on him. He went in the 3rd round. So we'll see what Matt LaFleur does with him. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback there altogether. Because if Aaron Rodgers isn't there, then all this throws out the window with Amari Rodgers.
Yeah, no, fully agree with that. I like this situation, but again, the player isn't necessarily fully developed, nor have we ever seen the Packers really run with this type of player. Randall Cobb, the people that want to compare him,
he's a reliable player. Like, that's my problem with Amari Rodgers, is that he isn't very reliable. So
that's exactly
yes, he's Randall Cobb's like body size and like profile theoretically, but we're talking about a guy with a number of production red flags, despite playing with an elite quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And we're talking about a guy who isn't all that reliable. And if there's anything we know about Aaron Rodgers, he rolls his eyes when his players drop passes and he doesn't trust them after that. So, I mean, I just don't really like the fit of Amari Rodgers. I think it would have been much better if Elijah Moore went here, because that's much more of a situation where Aaron Rodgers would have loved that type of player, because Elijah Moore is much more reliable than Amari Rodgers. So the last guy that we're going to talk about just briefly, Josh Palmer from the Los Angeles Chargers. He's a guy that was drafted, probably overdrafted a little bit in the 3rd round. But the thing that's interesting about him is that he has a pretty good profile from a framework perspective. He's a physical guy. He can win at the catch point. He's very good in contested situations. He's got good hands. He's a pretty decent route runner, and he showed really well at the Senior Bowl. The problem with him is that he didn't have a lot of production in college, and he's somewhat raw as a player. But with going to the Los Angeles Chargers, the reason I actually like his landing spot is because, 1, he's tied to Justin Herbert, obviously, and 2, you have a guy in Mike Williams who's been inconsistent. He's been injured. I believe he's a free agent after this year. I'm not sure if they picked up his 5th-year option or not, but he's probably gone after this year as well. So if Mike Williams is gone after this year, Josh Palmer came in with 3rd-round draft capital, could be potentially groomed into the number 2 option in that offense with Hunter Henry now in New England as well. So again, like I said, for some of these other guys, if he's a young, talented receiver, he turns out to be a young, talented receiver, he's got the opportunity in front of him to take advantage of it.
Yep. No, I mean, you mentioned it all basically as it is. Let's just give a little homage to Josh Palmer, Canadian-born guy from actually Brampton. So a little shout out there, had to represent with the Canadian lad. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that isn't committed to Mike Williams long-term. Can this guy take touches away from who's their fucking wide receiver last year? Oh my God.
Jalen Guyton.
Jalen Guyton. Yeah.
And that's the thing too, right? Justin Herbert made Jalen Guyton relevant. Like, if Josh Palmer is talented, and I wrote him up for the draft guide, I've watched his film. He is talented. He just needs to be coached. And I think the Chargers have shown that they have good receiving coaches and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens with Josh Palmer. He's not necessarily a guy that I'm super, super high on, but if you can get him in the maybe in the late 3rd round, I think that he's a great upside swing. And once I do an updated sleepers video, you bet your ass he's going to be in that thing. So,
I mean, I was mentioning guys earlier on about having a potential Chase Claypool-like emergence. Mm-hmm. This guy fits the size, speed type of profile that we saw from Claypool coming in. Everybody wanted to make fun of Claypool's production in college. Everybody's going to make fun of Josh Palmer's production in college. He's going to land with a much better quarterback than even Claypool got, in a less crowded situation that Claypool was. Now, I'm not comparing him from the talent standpoint right now.
He's not the same type of athlete.
He's not the same type of athlete, but in terms of commanding targets and in terms of working down the field, he can provide that type of role. So overall, I mean, again, I know I'm just throwing out a Claypool comp to basically everybody, but at the end of the day here, we're talking about third-round rookie picks. You're not expecting them to bruise it at a Claypool level. If they do that, then guess what? You just fucking banked on the farm and absolutely won the jackpot. But yeah, with that being said, Josh Palmer is absolutely worth a third-round dart throw. And
real quick on him too is he had 4 touchdowns last year. Can you guess what teams and corners those came against? He had 2 touchdowns against Georgia. Both were against Tyson Campbell, who was the 33rd overall pick.
That makes sense.
Draft. He burned Pat Surtain against Alabama deep as well. And I don't think J.C. Horn was in coverage, but he did get some. He did score a touchdown against South Carolina and got some catches against J.C. Horn. So he's proven that he can play against NFL competition. He played in the SEC his whole career. The only problem with him is he's just like, why didn't he produce more? Like, that's the biggest problem with him. Is like, he should have produced more. If he had produced at like a De'Ami Brown type of level as a college player, we would have been talking about a guy that the fantasy community would have been all over.
And no, 100%. Again, like you're looking at the production, even this year, 475 in 10 games, 4 touchdowns. Everybody's just going to be like, oh, well, what the heck? Well, first of all, can we talk about the fact that Tennessee has not had a reliable quarterback really? Can we mention the last time? Like,
they use like a wide receiver by committee thing too.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
It's fucking annoying. So overall, people are just going to straight point at the stats, but you need context. Sometimes we've preached this on the channel multiple times. Give your context and try to understand what the stats mean. When you actually look into Josh Palmer's stats, you can see why they were low because of the shitty situation he was in Tennessee. Anyways, let's get off the defense of Josh Palmer. With that being said, we will see you guys back on the quarterback tight end video that we're going to be releasing later this week. Any closing thoughts here, Corey?
No, yeah, and make sure you guys are tuning in. If you guys are looking for mock drafts, you're like, where are the mock drafts? We need a dynasty, a rookie mock draft. They're coming. Don't worry. We want to get through the rankings first because, one, we need to form our own opinions about these guys to know where we're going to take them in a mock draft, because we could have done a mock draft yesterday and just been like, yep, this is our mock draft, but we wanted to actually dig into some of these guys first.
Do our research.
Really understand the landing spot. And then when we do a mock draft, it's much more helpful to you guys. So if you guys did enjoy this video, if you enjoy all of our videos, make sure you guys like them, comment any of your thoughts down below. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. It's free and it helps us out tremendously, helps us grow. So please do that. If you're interested in more Dynasty rookie content, I referenced the draft guide numerous times in this video. You can go to the website and check that out. It's only $15 right now, and you'll get all of our rankings, all of our everything related to Dynasty and rookie drafts coming up.
100%. With that being said, take it easy, y'all. If you made it this far in the video, comment 88 or comment CeeDee Lamb just because it's a classic on the channel. Anyways, peace out, y'all.